Oh, yeah. Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation brought to you by the great folks over at Greta. Greta's a great spot for all games, home and away. Harmon, can you tell me where the best place to watch Kevin Lankinen stone every shot is?
Greta.
That's the correct answer. We'll be there for Canucks Army viewing parties throughout the season. I really want to say the day. I'm excited for it. I'm so excited for it. One of these days I'm going to crack, but it is in October. It's in the back half of October. I did this last year too. I started to tell people just too many hints about it, and then they were able to guess the dates. We want to keep some mystery here, but there's no mystery that the watch parties at Greta are going to be electric, and there's no mystery that you're going to have a great time if you head on down to Greta with weekly drink specials. Greta Bar YVR is the place to be. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Harmon, a game will begin tonight. Not televised, so people are going to have to figure out how to watch it. I think you'll be able to listen to a radio call, I would assume, on Sportsnet 650. I'm not sure about that, but people will find their way to consume the game. I know we'll have something up on Canucks Army post-game, so if you miss it, folks, go read Canucks Army, because we'll have something up, I'm sure, about that. Canucks versus Kraken tonight, Harm. Jacob, can we get the playing roster here? Harmon Dial, Dave Quadrelli, technical producer Jacob Lazar.
I'll need a minute or two to get the roster for you.
No problem.
I'm working on it.
The thing that stands out on the playing roster, Harm, is no JT Miller tonight. We know Kevin Lankinen's going to start in goal. Rick Tocchet said that at yesterday's practice out at UBC, but still no JT Miller. And the Canucks can say whatever they want, right? Like we heard that, oh, he did really well in fitness testing. It's just weird that JT Miller hasn't gotten into a game through 3 games, but he was good at training camp, played in the scrimmage. He has been practicing every day. Like, it doesn't seem like he's hurt, and maybe he's got something going on, but it is just weird that he isn't in a game yet.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit odd. I mean, he's the only marquee player, correct me if I'm wrong, that hasn't appeared yet through 3 preseason games. But I'm also not worried yet because we haven't even hit the halfway point of preseason yet. So where the concern maybe ramps up is if it's game 4, game 5, game 6 of preseason and we haven't seen him yet. That's where you start to raise your eyebrows a little bit more. But I'm not worried about Miller's availability or health at this point. I imagine it's just about giving him as much rest as possible, and knowing that Miller's one of those players that doesn't need a lot of preseason games to turn on, right? Some veterans, they need time and game reps in preseason to actually feel comfortable, to feel closer to the peak form. JT's always been one of those players, just watching him over the years in camps and at preseasons, where there's almost no point judging how he looks in those environments, because once the games actually begin, it's like a switch is flipped and he all of a sudden becomes a completely different player. So definitely something to watch as preseason continues, but it's not something I'm worried about.
Okay, we see the projected roster here, and also included on that, the Canucks are saying that they're going to stream it live on Canucks.com, so you're not going to have to go find a shady stream of Seattle Root Sports or whatever it was. It looks like you're going to be able to see it on Canucks.com, so there's your streaming information for that game tonight. Now, that being said, Harm, when we talk about JT Miller, here's what I'm thinking. You remember in The Office when Nellie just starts saying no? Like, they're like, no, you're not the manager. You can't do this. And she just says no, and nobody really knows how to deal with it. I'm just imagining that they're telling JT Miller, so you're going to go in this game. And she's like, no. Like, what? No, I'm not doing it. No, I'm not going to. And there's like, what do you mean no? And then he's just not going into games. That's what I'm imagining.
For some reason, as somebody that's watched The Office twice, I can't quite picture that scene anymore.
Okay, so do you remember when Andy leaves and Nellie takes his job, right?
Yeah. Who's Nellie again?
Nellie is Catherine Tate's character, the British lady that comes in like season 7, right? Okay.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she sits in Andy's office, and Robert California goes in and is like, okay, time to go. Like, you're not the manager. And she just keeps saying no. And Robert doesn't really know how to deal with that. And then all of a sudden she's the manager.
Yeah. I don't know how we ended up with this coming up. I think we spent too much time talking about TV shows yesterday. So let's just try and get this back on the rails.
You know what's funny? There was some loud people complaining in the chat yesterday saying, oh, talk hockey. I had more than one person reach out after the show, said, I don't say anything in the chat usually, but I really liked when you guys started talking non-hockey. Did you know, Harm? There was once a time when this show started with 10 minutes of non-hockey talk, and we had listeners who only listened to the non-hockey talk, and then they would turn off the podcast. Yeah, I mean, you were a third host when the show was like that.
Yeah,
sometimes.
I remember the first 10 minutes. I'm just surprised people were that into it.
Imagine if there was a train that just didn't start on the rails. It had to get going, and then it started, and it was once it was 10 minutes in, it gets on the rails. That's how Canucks Convo used to be, but no longer. We're very serious hockey analysts on this show, but I had fun. I had fun talking non-hockey with you yesterday, Harm. But let's talk hockey. The Canucks face the Kraken tonight. The playing roster again, Jacob. Just pull it back up. Elias Pettersson's going to play. Jake DeBrusk's going to play. Kiefer Sherwood skated on that line yesterday. I think we talked about this already, that we would like to see Kiefer Sherwood get that shot. Thing I'm wondering, Brock Besser's there. Who's Brock Besser going to play with tonight? Atu Ratu is not in the lineup. Jonathan Lekkerimäki is not in the lineup. Who is Brock Besser going to play with tonight? Is it going to be Pius Suter? Like, that's when I'm trying to put this lineup together in my head. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, maybe like a Suter, Heinen, Besser line is sort of what makes sense on paper to me. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what Sherwood can do playing in a role potentially further up the lineup with Pettersson. He's never really had a chance in his career to play with skilled line mates at the NHL level. So to now all of a sudden have an opportunity to play with guys of Pettersson and DeBrusk's caliber, I'm really intrigued to see what he can do. Not that Sherwood in a top 6 role is a plan A option for the Canucks when the regular season starts by any means, but you know that when injuries occur or when the team or top 6 just looks flat, that the coaching staff is going to want alternative looks to go to and to shuffle guys that start in a bottom 6 role to temporarily give a top 6 line a spark. And I'm really curious to see if Sherwood can be one of those players that can jumpstart a line and just bring more energy, but not just the energy aspect. Again, because a lot of times Lafferty would get that opportunity because, we think he can get it on the forecheck and because he's fast. Sherwood's hands and sense is underrated at times. I think we've seen that through camp. I think we've seen that through preseason, and I'm curious to see if he can build some chemistry on that line with Pettersson potentially.
Another thing I'm wondering is, do we see Kirill Kudryavtsev get in a game? I'm thinking yes, because he's on the roster for tonight. We saw him yesterday, and we were wondering that. But what I'm really wondering, is he going to get in a game with Tyler Myers as his defense partner? Because you would assume, just looking at this playing roster, if he gets in with Myers, he's going to be playing some pretty big minutes tonight.
I'd like to see it. I think him and DPD played at a really similar level through camp. And in fact, I thought Kudryavtsev was better than DPD during the scrimmage on Sunday. So if DPD was able to get a preseason game, I don't see why Kudryavtsev shouldn't, especially because Talk had pointed him out as somebody that's impressed him just based off the pro reps that he was giving during drills and looking like he belonged among other NHL players. So it'll be a really interesting test too, because looking at the lineup that Seattle is apparently going to ice based off their morning skate, they've got some legit talent, right? They've got Schwartz, Stevenson, Bjorkstrand, Eberle, Tolvanen, Shane Wright, all expected to draw into the lineup up front, and on the back end, they've got most of their NHL defensemen. No Vince Dunn being sort of the main drawback there, but this is a legit close to NHL roster for Seattle, at least when you look at their top 6 forwards and their first 4 to 5 defensemen. So that'll be an interesting test for a young player like Kudryavtsev.
Rivalry's brewing. They want to get that win tonight. Ty David in the chat's not anyone else just yet, but he said, is Myers going to get run for his hit last game? Myers has been public enemy number 1 in Seattle for a while, even more than Jerry DiPoto, it feels like. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, there's bad blood between these two teams. We know that. I think the first game of the preseason kind of solidified that. And tonight we'll see how it goes for them. Like I said, Kevin Lankinen starts in goal. Harmon, anything else that you wanted to get in about the game tonight?
No, I mean, I just wanted to add, I don't think anybody from Seattle is going to be seeking retribution. I mean, are we talking about the scrum where he
dove in on Borgen?
I don't think that's that big of a deal.
Ian Furness was really upset about it.
I mean, well, Seattle reporters have been upset in the past about a lot of things, but I don't know. Put it this way. Ben Myers, his cross-check on Friedman was worse, was dirtier.
Sure.
And there was
we're not even talking
nobody
about
on the Canucks went after Ben Myers.
Was that because it was on Mark Friedman?
No.
And I didn't mean like the Canucks don't like Mark Friedman. I meant more like the reputation Mark Friedman seems to have is that he's a bit of a, he embellishes sometimes.
Really? That's a reputation he has?
Yeah, someone mentioned that to me too. Yeah, Daniel Wagner mentioned it to me sitting in the press box, and I didn't really know that. And I'll show you after the show, but it's pretty easy to find some embellishments of Mark Friedman throughout his career.
I don't think that factored in though.
I didn't think it was a reputation,
And I
among the
mean, he
refs,
didn't
but
come out for the start of the period.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, let's move on.
But despite me not thinking there's going to be specific retribution for Myers and him kind of tackling Borgen, I am interested to see if it's going to be a chippy game again.
Mm-hmm. I think it will be. Like, I think so. I think there's enough pro guys in there that it will be a chippy game. And Myers is in there. You got Myers patrolling the blue line. It's going to be chippy. You know it's going to be chippy. Okay, quickly, before we get to our poll question here, Matt Larkin is going to join us at the end of the show, so we're going to get through everything first. I did want to say, just show schedule update. We're taking Monday off. We take the holiday off. So we'll be back on Tuesday to break down everything. And then Friday, I'll tell you now, next Friday, a week from today, Bag Milk is going to join us because the Canucks are going to play their Oilers in, I think that's their final preseason game, right? October 4th is their final preseason game.
They
might have one after that.
No,
So
the fourth against Edmonton is the final game of the preseason.
I knew it, never doubted myself. Okay, let's get to our poll question, which is brought to you by Mr. Lube. I don't even know what the poll question is. Jacob took the reins on this one. Jacob, show me what you came up with. There it is. By our poll question brought to you by Mr. Lube. How many goals will Daniel Sprong score this season for the Canucks? Our options were under 10, 10 to 19, or 20 plus. 55% of voters say 10 to 19, and 42.5% say 20 plus. Under 10 gets 2.5% of the vote. Harm, I'm going 20 plus here. I'm saying he's at least a 20 goal scorer. At least.
Well, the interesting thing with this question is it's not so much even related to his actual goal scoring ability. It really comes down to how much ice time is he going to get? Is he going to be a player that appears in all 82 games, or is he going to have games where he's sat in the press box as a healthy scratch? And really, this is ironically a question about how quickly can he catch up from a defensive standpoint, earn Tocchet's trust, be able to excel in a lot of the staples and non-negotiables that Tocchet often references. That's going to be the key in dictating how many games he plays, how much ice time he gets, how high up the lineup he plays, how many skilled line mates he gets. And that therefore is going to be the biggest driver of his goal scoring production, because we know he has the talent to score a bunch of goals. It's just, is he going to be in the lineup consistently enough and playing enough minutes to actually do that offensive damage?
All right, that was our poll question. It was brought to you by Mr. Lube. Mr. Lube and Tires Change Your Oil, Change Your Wipers event is on now. Visit MrLube.com to download your coupon for a free pair of Goodyear hybrid wiper blades with any oil change for a limited time at Mr. Lube. Find them at one of their 18 locations in the Lower Mainland. Harm, let's get right to it. Let's get to anyone else, which is brought to you by the Vancouver Canadians. The Seas thank fans for another great season at the Nat this summer. If you're looking to guarantee your seat for all the action in 2025, please visit CanadiansBaseball.com or call 604-872-5232. Bit of a shorter episode today. We're going to be joined soon by Matt Larkin of Daily Faceoff, but Harm, for anyone else, I think there's some headlines to get to around the league. Drew Doughty out month to month. We saw that gruesome ankle injury. He needed surgery to repair that ankle. He's going to be out month to month, but they are thinking he'll be back before the end of the regular season. Obviously, that's a brutal injury, and you don't wish that on anybody, especially a player of Doughty's status. And I mean, at his age, how old is Drew Doughty? Without looking, how old do you think Drew Doughty is?
35, maybe?
He's 34. He's 34. When does he turn 35? Why can't I find his birthday? Isn't this supposed to be listed right here? Oh yeah. Okay. He turns 35 in December. So
close enough.
Close enough. I mean, you were still wrong. I'm just kidding.
I mean, I was.
You were wrong, but you were almost right. Almost right is a good one to go. Okay, people, get your anyone else's in the YouTube live chat. Let's answer some questions. Yeah, tell me.
So have you followed along with what's going on in Ottawa and Travis Green?
The thing yesterday where he was like, half of you are going to be gone tomorrow or something.
Yeah. So this is a tweet yesterday from Claire Hanna of TSN. I just saw this today, and because Travis Green was trending on Twitter, and I was curious what's going on. This is the tweet from Claire. Travis Green ended the Sens skate by saying, "quote For most of you, this is your last game."
No. Okay. I retweeted this because it's hilarious. I wonder if Travis meant that in a way like, hey, this is your last game, like, play hard tonight, or it's like, a lot of you have disappointed me, and you're all like, half of you are going to be gone after this game. Like, I was trying to figure out how Travis meant that.
I don't know the context in all honesty, but it sounded like the game before they lost, and he had some quotes about a lot of guys not helping themselves.
Oh, I miss Travis. I miss Travis being empowered as a head coach. It's gonna be great. When did the yeah?
Speaking of that, do you remember the first week when Rick Tocchet took over, and the Canucks had a couple of rough games where they like couldn't break the puck out, were horrible defensively, and some of the banger quotes that Tocchet had about having to go back to elementary school
Go back
for
to grade
defending.
school.
It was just like some of the post-game press conferences he had were so fire, were so entertaining, and so hilarious in hindsight.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, like him telling that story of how he had to be calmed down on a street corner at 2 a.m. Do you remember that? Like,
No.
it was his second game behind the bench. I think that's when he gave the grade school quote. And he said he was like super hot. I'll send you the story. We wrote about it at Canucks Army. But he said like Adam Foote and Sergei Gonchar had to like calm him down, and they were like, "We just took the job. Like, it's not going to fix itself overnight. Like, take it easy. You can't be so fired up on day 2 or whatever." And Tocchet spoke about how that was like a learning experience for him. It was like, you have to. It's that partnership between coach and player where it's like, okay, I understand you guys clearly don't know what the hell you're doing, so we need to slowly get to that level where you do. Actually know what you're doing. So I'll send you that story, but it's a good one. If you look like if you Google Canucks Army Rick Tocchet 2 a.m., that's the first thing that'll come up. So if you want to find it, folks, go find that story. It's a good story. It's a really good story about the street corner. Got to be a better way to say that, but anyways, we'll leave it at that. Anyone else? John Gibson out as well. I've told you this before we went to air harm. Canucks got pretty damn lucky with that Kevin Lankinen contract, right? Because there was that rumor that the Ducks were looking at Lankinen, but it was, hinging on them either moving Gibson or finding something to do with their goaltending situation to make room for Lankinen. And now there's room. Gibson's going to be out 3 to 6 weeks. And when you hear 3 to 6 weeks for a goaltender, I'm usually thinking that's toward the longer side of that, especially when you're on the Anaheim Ducks. Like the Anaheim Ducks maybe they'll try and rush him back, but I think the player wouldn't want to rush back in that instance. Canucks definitely got a little lucky that they signed Lankinen when they did.
Absolutely. And just because we haven't touched on Lankinen in his first start for the Canucks tonight, I'm of course intrigued to see how he plays, but I'm tempering expectations. I'm sort of thinking about what the last week must have been like for him, first dealing with the contract negotiations and accepting this idea that, okay, I'm going to sign in Vancouver, then flying across the globe from Finland, integrating with a new team, not having a normal training camp. Yeah, he's had opportunities to practice with the team, but that's not a typical getting back up to speed type routine or week for Kevin Lankinen. So this is a great opportunity for him to get his feet wet, actually face some real scrimmage / game like competition. And truthfully, I'm not really going to be judging him at all on his performance just because of how chaotic the last week has been.
Okay, we haven't talked about this yet. I think we kind of touched on it when it first happened, but Ian Clark, the report came out today from Elliot Friedman, and Dhaliwal also had something to say about it. Let's start with Friedman, who was on 32 Thoughts. He said that Ian Clark may move on with the Canucks' blessing. The quote here is, I think they're not going to stand, or excuse me, I think that it's known that Clark may move on with the Canucks' blessing. I think they're not going to stand in the way here if an opportunity opens for him. New Jersey already has a goaltending department, but he knows Jacob Markstrom well. Friedman goes on to kind of wonder about that, talks about how the relationship between Clark and the Canucks has kind of turned in a bad direction, but he's still a really sharp guy who knows goaltending. Obviously, we know he's very well regarded around the league, but obviously people were wondering about that role change for Ian Clark that came out in the summer, where he was taken off director of goaltending and made a goaltending scout and goaltending development coach or something like that. I think that was his official title. But again, he was signed to be the director of goaltending, served in that role for the past 3 seasons. And again, we want to make it clear, he did go to the Canucks and say, I can't go on the ice anymore. We know about his injuries. We've talked about it. And then from there, again, this is also what Dollywall said. The belief is that Clark wanted to be the director of goaltending. Even though he wasn't going to be on the ice as the coach, the goaltending coach, he still wanted to be the director of goaltending, but that didn't end up happening. So what Dollywall said today as well, I will not be surprised if the Canucks give him permission to talk to other teams. Now we're hearing he's being linked to the Devils. I could throw some teams out there, but I'm not going to. Goes on to say, I can confirm that the relationship has gone in a bad direction, is what Dollywall said. I don't think the relationship is in a good state. I think it's definitely soured. There's a lot of things at play here. One is the demotion to goalie scout. And again, Dollywall reiterates what I just said, that it was Ian Clark that went to the Canucks and said, my shoulders, my knees, I can't do the goalie coach thing every day. But then again, I think the disagreement was where okay, what's next for Ian Clark with the Canucks. So look, the Canucks are free to run their organization however they want, and look, I make no mistake about it. I talk a lot about Ian Clark and I admire his work a lot, but like I don't want to see the same, and not to, I don't know, this isn't a knock out Ian Clark or anything, but do you remember how everybody lost their minds when Judd Brackett left the organization?
Yeah.
I think that was more about Judd Brackett's leaving and now we're stuck with Jim Benning. But now, like, you know, like the Canucks drafting and scouting has been okay without Judd Brackett. And I don't know. And again, I don't want to turn this into I don't think Judd Brackett's good at what he does, because of course that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying, like, let's try to see where the Canucks go with this. If Ian Clark leaves, it's not the end of the world. Let's see what the Canucks actually kind of pivot with here.
Yeah, it is a blow, though. Let's not sugarcoat it. If he ends up moving on elsewhere, is he a perfect goaltending coach? No, but he's absolutely one of the most respected ones around the NHL, and the proof is sort of in the pudding over the years in terms of the goaltenders that he's worked with and the results that he's been able to get out of his number one netminders. And this was kind of when the initial transition was announced. The timing of it and him not having the director title did come off as, okay, I've got question marks now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not overly surprised that the situation has turned in this type of potential direction. It's unfortunate because, again, I think he's extremely talented. And even if he wasn't going to be on the ice on a day-to-day basis, I would have liked to see him still heavily involved in running this goaltending department. But historically, Jim Rutherford has been... he's a former NHL goaltender himself. He's been a little bit more hands-on. And whereas I think in the Benning regime, management just gave Ian Clark free reign to kind of do whatever he wants. Clearly, the organization wants to be a little bit more hands-on. And there's some level of disagreement with it. And this is where we are now.
People in the chat reacting to this. This one from Captain Canuck. We should be doing everything to keep him. We need him to teach Artie. I get it. I will say, though, like, the on-ice goalie coach right now is Marco Terenius, and he is, he's trained by Ian Clark. I said it at training camp when I was watching the goalies warm up. It's the same stuff as what we saw Ian Clark doing with the goalies. Now, is Marco Terenius Ian Clark? No, he's not. But to me, the bigger blow harm is not so much like, okay, on the ice, because that wasn't going to happen anyway. That didn't really matter, right? Like, Ian Clark wasn't going to be able to go on the ice. That's a blow in itself. But the blow now, I think, is more on, okay, like, are you going to be able to go get another Artur Shilovs? Are you going to be able to get Nikita Tolopilo here? I think where it's going to hurt them is on the amateur and pro scouting side, where, look, every free agent, it feels like, that signed here, free agent goaltender, whoever, any goaltender that joins the Canucks organization by choice says, yeah, I'm really excited to work with Ian Clark. Like, I want to see what Ian Clark can do for my game. To me, that's where it's going to hurt more. But that being said, you just got Kevin Lankinen because he worked with Marco Terenius. So, everybody's going to have their strengths as well. And I say this as somebody who's been a huge fan of Ian Clark, and I still am, I'm just saying, like, let's see what ends up happening if he actually goes, because I think what's going to happen is you're going to feel the effects in a few years. You're not going to have that same goaltending pipeline, but let's give the Canucks a chance to develop that goaltending pipeline.
Yeah, I think that's a fair, reasonable take.
Okay, this one from Ty David. Is there any Canucks players that will likely get waived and claimed? We should also mention that Jet Wu and Guillaume Brisebois passed through waivers, so both of them are reporting to Abbotsford for training camp. Are there any players that you think might get claimed? Like, that are going to hit waivers in the coming days. I can't really think of anybody. There's no real surprise coming. It doesn't feel like. Does Phil DiGiuseppe get claimed if he hits waivers? I don't think he's going to hit waivers, but I also don't think he'd get claimed.
Yeah, and same thing if it's a Nil Zaman, especially since he has, he obviously makes one-way money, and I believe he has if I'm not mistaken, I want to double check this. I think he has a second year of term left on his contract as well, which means if you're claiming the guy, then it's more of a financial commitment in terms of total dollars that you'd have to commit. Give me 1 second while I'm looking it up. But the other thing to keep in mind is there's so many players that, it's year 1 of 2 for Oman. There's so many players that hit the waiver wire that you look at and go, this is probably an NHL caliber player, but because every team's in the same boat where they just don't have roster spaces, you often see good players slip through the cracks in waivers and not get claimed. And I don't think PDG and Oman, that tier of player, is so highly regarded around the rest of the league that teams are going to be changing their roster plans just to claim a guy like that. It's a little bit different if it's a younger player, like let's say a Podkolzin landed on waivers, he was going to get claimed because he's got pedigree, he's got potential upside, especially for a younger rebuilding team. They would have wanted to roll the dice. Now, that's not to say it's a guarantee that an Oman or a PDG makes it through, but I would bet more likely than not that they don't. Mark Friedman's also probably part of that conversation if the Canucks end up rolling with 3 goaltenders on their active roster and only 7 defensemen instead of 8. Friedman's likely to be the 8th guy, has some NHL experience. But again, in the sort of similar tier where I'd be surprised if he actually ends up getting claimed.
Okay. This one, there's a few. First one from Dan Carlson. I think he's saying he's from Sweden. He said, please, can you talk slowly, DQ? I'm 60 from Sweden. Dan, I appreciate it. I'll do my best to slow it down. Did you also know, Harm, a lot of people listen to our podcast on double speed or like 1.5 speed. I'm wondering what I sound like in 1.5 or double speed. Like double is just too fast. I sometimes do the 1.25 speed, but I can't do double speed. And especially me in double speed, you wouldn't be able to hear what I'm saying.
I've always been a 1x podcast listener speed. I don't know what it is.
The 1.25.
The 1.5 or the 1.75 even is the best way to catch up. If you start convo late and you want to get back up to the live show, pop into 1.5. But Quads, you're right. 2x, little too fast, especially with how quickly you talk.
That's right. This one from Ty David. Is Tolopilo going to get a preseason game? I'm surprised to have not seen him so far, and he's not playing tonight. I started to wonder this as well, Harm. Yuri Patera is the backup tonight, so it's going to be a Kevin Lankinen start. We know that. Is it going to be Tolopilo tomorrow? I don't think so. I think Tocchet actually said he thinks that Artie is going to start on Saturday, which is smart. Like, you want to see Shelovs get some games, but I would have liked to have seen Tolopilo get one game. Like I said, up until the playoffs when they needed Shelovs, Tolopilo was right there with Archer Shelovs. So I would have liked to seen him get a game, but doesn't look like it. Like, I don't think he's going to get a game. We'll see. Like, I'd assume you'd want Kevin Lankinen to get that next one on Monday, and then Shelovs gets the final one on the 4th. I think that's what you would end up doing. So yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think we're going to see a Tolopilo start, but anyways, was there another one? Yeah, this one from KJ on Ian Clark. He said, respect for Ian Clark. He'll get a great opportunity if he wants. It's time to pass the torch. More people talking about Markstrom. They think that Markstrom would want Ian Clark in New Jersey. Obviously, we know Markstrom has a really, really good relationship with Ian Clark. Okay. Anything else that you wanted to get to before we get to our Bet365 bet of the day and then our conversation with Matt Larkin?
Nope.
All right, let's do it. Let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day, which is brought to you by, you guessed it, Bet365. Harm, it's been a while since I could just take Canucks money line, but tonight I'm taking it. They're the favorites. It's the first time I've bet against a Seattle sports team in a while on our Bet365 bet of the day, but we're taking the Canucks to win tonight at -120 odds. You can go get that over at Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets, whatever the sport, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code VANBONUS when you sign up for an account. All right, let's bring him in. Let's bring in our conversation with Matt Larkin of Daily Faceoff. Very pleased to be joined now by Matt Larkin of Daily Faceoff. Matt, thanks so much for doing this. How you doing today?
I'm good, guys. I'm excited to talk hockey. I'm excited to look ahead to the regular season. I'm really sick of watching guys get hurt in the preseason. To me, I just want to fire that thing into the sun. But let's go, boys. Let's talk.
Let's start there. The most recent injury we've seen, obviously John Gibson, we're going to talk about that, but Drew Doughty today. I think they announced that he's not going to be out for the entire season. But they are saying that he's going to miss some time. A pretty gruesome injury for Drew Doughty, listed as month to month with a fractured ankle.
Yeah, it's tough. Drew Doughty, to me, obviously still an important cog on that team, especially when you look at the changes that Rob Blake made this offseason. I was not happy with the Kings offseason, bringing in guys like Joel Edmondson. This team got slower. I think they're going to take a step back in net. Cam Talbot was a lot better than Darcy Kemper. Now you lose your number one defenseman. I'm actually kind of bearish right now on the LA Kings making the playoffs. On the other hand, what an opportunity for Brandt Clark, one of the best prospects in the game. He's a right shot. He's got unbelievable puck moving skills. We know he absolutely lit up the OHL, lit up the AHL, made it look pretty easy. And the Kings, they need this guy right now. So that's the silver lining if you're a Kings fan feeling despair to start the year. Brandt Clark, massive opportunity.
One of the things that, sticking to the Pacific Division, that I've been really curious about, a team that I've been trying to get a handle on, has been the Vegas Golden Knights, right? It's still not that long ago that they won the Stanley Cup, and yet they took a step back last year, lost some top nine wingers, most notably Jonathan Marchessault in the offseason. And it feels like, at least when we're discussing Pacific teams, that there's not as much discussion around Vegas. And I'm trying to figure out, are they just a playoff caliber team that isn't a real threat to contend for the Cup? Or are they going to be able to recapture the type of form that won them the Stanley Cup? How do you look at Vegas heading into the season?
Yeah, it's funny, Harmon. I talked to Jack Eichel about this a couple of weeks ago at the Player Media Tour, how it was a weird off season for Vegas. Normally they're the evil empire, just chasing every shiny new thing, upgrading like crazy. But they were so quiet just based on their cap situation. They actually couldn't do much. But one thing that Eichel was telling me about was the idea that they have kind of an upgrade from within when it comes to Thomas Hertl, because he obviously was coming back from a pretty major injury last year. It was sort of a nightmare year in San Jose. He gets with the team. He comes back in time for the playoffs, but he never really gets into a rhythm. So if you're a Golden Knights fan, you're hoping that you get the real version of Thomas Hertl this year. If you don't, I think that it's going to be a weird season for Vegas, right? You trade away Logan Thompson. Aiden Hill is going to be your starting goaltender. He's never started more than 35 games in a season. He's great, but his durability is relatively untested. So I'm a little uncertain about what to expect. Vegas usually finds a way, and they're always willing, of course, we know, to punt those first-round picks and prospects at every turn. They just don't care. So you can never count them out. But I do think it's one of the weirder off seasons in this Vegas era, because they were really quiet when you look at it.
Matt, well, shifting a little bit to the Canucks here, you were clamoring for a team to sign Daniel Sprong in the offseason. The Canucks ended up doing that. He looked like Connor McDavid the other night, and you obviously saw the goal. Just what did you like so much about Daniel Sprong in the offseason, and what do you think the Canucks are getting with this player?
Yeah, well, for me, it was all about efficiency. So Daniel Sprong, I'm a numbers guy, so I like to throw some stats at you, okay? So in the last 2 years, he had 39 goals. He played 11 minutes and 44 seconds per game. And if you look at goals per 60 at 5-on-5, he was top 10 in the NHL over the last 2 years, right between Carter Verhaeghe and Zach Hyman. So we know Daniel Sprong, relative to the time you give him, he puts the puck in the net. He's not someone you're going to be putting on your Selke Trophy ballot, I think, ever. So you could argue he needs to play in the top six to really be effective. I know that hasn't been his deployment so far in the preseason, but to me, I'm wondering, obviously, Jonathan Lekkerimäki has been getting a look higher in the lineup. I don't know if that's going to actually stick, if he's going to make the team, but I wonder if you're going to see Daniel Sprong eventually in that top six, maybe playing with DeBrusk and Elias Pettersson. I think that would be a very fun fit, because to me, I just don't think Sprong has gotten enough of an opportunity in his career to play even, let's give him 15 minutes. What could he do? If he's scoring that much with 11 minutes, what could he do with even 15 minutes a game? I don't think he's going to be a defensive liability with that amount of ice time, but just with his efficiency, I'm kind of curious to see what he can bring. I think he's got 20, 25 goals in his stick.
Big picture, how bullish are you on the Canucks relative to the rest of this league's sort of pool of Stanley Cup contenders? Do you view them as legit contenders?
Yeah, it's hard. Like I sigh when I'm asked that question because it all comes down to goaltending. I don't know what's going to happen, and my shoulders kind of slump with each Thatcher Demko update because it's just so murky. And this knee, we're all studying human anatomy, learning what the popliteus muscle is. I think that's how you pronounce it, in his knee. And there's this idea that Demko is going to be dealing with this forever, managing this forever. And we know he's quote unquote getting better, but there's still no timetable for the return. So we're looking at Artur Silovs, who, yes, he gave them a lift in the playoffs, but he was still their third string, not their second string goalie. Their third string goalie, you have Kevin Lankin coming in, who's more experienced than Silovs, so maybe he eventually usurps him for the number 2, I guess, temporary number 1 role, whatever it's going to be. But to me, that's the biggest question mark. The good news is I think the Pacific still looks pretty soft. You have so many teams that are in transition in real rebuild mode. I think LA is going the wrong direction as well. So to me, Vancouver is an easy playoff team, but the ceiling is so uncertain for me because of the goaltending.
How hard was it to rank the goaltending tandems around the league, let alone the Canucks, who you had at 15th? Like, how hard was it just to do all of that? That was a big undertaking there on DFO that you did.
Yeah, it was fun, but it was tough. And sort of the main criterion I used to create the whole list was what 82 games of goaltending are you going to get? So if you have a number 1 who plays a ton, Connor Hellebuyck, UC Saros, okay, that's 65 games out of the sample. I've got to put those teams very high in the rankings, regardless of the backup. Maybe some teams have 2 good goalies, like the New York Islanders. So no matter what, you're getting 82 good games of goaltending. They go high. With the Canucks, they're right in the middle of the pack because I'm factoring in if Demko plays, that's going to be quality goaltending, of course, Vezina Trophy finalist. But if he doesn't, then what are you getting from Silovs and Lankinen? They both have relatively small sample sizes in their career. And even if Demko is healthy, what's his workload going to be? I can't imagine he's going to set a career high in starts. If anything, he's going to be load managed more. So I tried to strike the balance between kind of giving Demko his big ups, because we know he's a great goaltender if he's healthy, but also pricing in the risk because we just don't know what we're going to see in terms of his playing time this year.
One general league trend that I'm curious to see if you agree on is it seems like even the best teams in the NHL right now have flaws. I think back to when the Avs won the Cup in 2022 or the Lightning in 2020 and 2021. You could look at those teams on paper and say definitively it was just hard to poke holes and weaknesses and flaws with those rosters. Whereas I look at some of the contenders today and you look at a team like Dallas and how thin they are on the right side of the blue line, or even Edmonton, their blue line situation's questionable. A team like Colorado, their goaltending, the Rangers, there's always question marks around their 5-on-5 play. Do you agree with this idea that even the best teams in the NHL right now have flaws? And what do you think that means for the bigger picture trend of what we might see unfold this year as far as contenders?
Yeah, I think there's at least a partial case that it's true. Even if you look at the Edmonton Oilers, the fact they made it that far to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final with the goaltending duo they had, where Stuart Skinner, you just never knew what he was going to bring you at any given moment, whether it was in a period or a game or a week of the season. He was so hot cold. But at the same time, Florida Panthers, I think a lot of people would have said going into the playoffs, they're the most complete team in the NHL. They had no real flaws on paper, I would argue. But I will say this, in a cap era, the more successful you are, the more you have to pay your stars, the more top-heavy your roster gets, the more you have to rely on entry-level cap hits to help your team out and be successful. And I think that kind of plays into the argument that, hey, you are now more than ever relying on improvement from within, because you just have to. You have to have some guys making $900,000, $800,000 to have a successful team. It's the only way it's going to work. So based on that, yes, I think it's not a big surprise that we see little flaws in almost every team right now.
Okay, last one from me. Jeremy Swayman. When's he going to sign? Like, when is Jeremy Swayman going to sign in Boston?
Yeah, it's funny. I was saying this to someone the other day. I'm someone who's not an alarmist when it comes to RFAs. I'm always like telling people to calm down. Like, no, they're going to sign Moritz Seider, Lucas Raymond, Cole Perfetti, whatever, Thomas Harley. But when Don Sweeney said, I'm sure we're going to get this done by December, I was like, spit take, like, December? Oh, man, this is getting serious. And now we're just at a point where the season is starting in less than 2 weeks. So no matter what, I don't think we're going to be seeing Jeremy Swayman in uniform on opening night. It's going to be hard to get him up to speed. Even if he's staying in shape, it's not the same thing as being with the team, getting game reps, preseason, whatever you want to call it. So I think it's a legitimate concern for Boston right now. And I also think at the same time that they're going to be okay while they're waiting. Eunice Korpisalo, yes, he was terrible for Ottawa, but he hasn't played on good teams very often in his career. Last time he did was with the LA Kings. He was quite good down the stretch after the trade deadline a couple of years ago. And Brandon Bussy's been one of the best goalies in the AHL for the last couple of years. So they'll be okay. At the same time, you are in win now mode if you're the Boston Bruins. Brad Marchand is 36 years old. You just paid up for Nikita Zadorov, Elias Lindholm. You got to put the pedal to the metal, and now is not the time to get cute with that negotiation. You have to accept that Jeremy Swayman has the leverage and pay the man if you're Don Sweeney.
Looking around the NHL right now, is there a team that you think, whether it's for a positive reason in exceeding expectations or disappointing expectations in either direction, is there a team that you have a hot take about, that you're more bullish or more bearish on than the rest of the industry?
Yeah, okay. So you guys can flag me on this if you think this is a fake hot take and if I'm copping out. But I will say this team didn't make the playoffs last year. So yes, okay, fine. They were third overall the year before. But the New Jersey Devils, I think, I'll try to make this a hot take because I think most people agree they're going to get back into the playoffs. New coach. They had horrible injury luck last year. Their goaltending was terrible. They're going to fix that with Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen. But I'll make the take hot. I'll put it in the oven by saying I think the New Jersey Devils are going to go to the Stanley Cup final. They are my pick to reach the Cup final. I think they were absolutely stacked going into last year. It was just goaltending that let them down. They had a bunch of freak injuries. Pretty much every guy in their team got hurt. And I still think they're extremely deep. Their goaltending problem, even if they had league average goaltending last year, they would have made the playoffs. And I believe they're built to go all the way. So I hope that take is hot enough for you, fellas. That's what I'm going with.
That's
I love
absolutely hot. Do you have who's your Stanley Cup winner prediction? Is it also New Jersey?
I have them going to the final. I almost picked them because we will, by the way, have our predictions coming out soon on Daily Faceoff. But I thought, okay, just calm down, Larkin. This is just too much. So I have them getting there. But I think that the Edmonton Oilers, they're gonna look to what Florida did. They got all the way there, and I think they're gonna finish the job this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they load manage Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, if you see them playing 75 games each, because they're now at the point of their respective careers where they don't really have much left to accomplish in terms of individual hardware. I think they know they're ready to go all the way. So I think a little bit of load management for the Stars, and the Oilers are going to finish the job.
We just it's funny you mentioned that. This morning, like an hour ago, we had to do our staff predictions for the Athletics season predictions. And I also had an Edmonton, New Jersey Stanley Cup final with Edmonton winning. So
no way.
Wow. That's crazy because I have Canucks Panthers. No, I'm just kidding. Matt, thanks so much for doing this, man. We really appreciate it, and we will chat with you soon.
Absolute pleasure, guys. Anytime.
There he is, Matt Larkin. Our thanks to him for joining the show. We'll close it out there for my co-host Harman Dial and our technical producer Jacob Lazar. My name is Dave Woodrelli. Thank you so much for listening to the episode of the Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.